Well, thanks very much. Good morning, everyone. My name is Charles Vare. I'm from the Rotman Institute of Philosophy at Western University in Canada. It's a great pleasure to be chairing this first theme, looking at cluster randomized trials, a topic near and dear to my heart. So let me say a few things briefly to orient everyone to cluster randomized trials. They are different from individually randomized trials and are commonly used in knowledge translation, public health, and health services research. The fundamental difference between ordinary randomized trials and cluster trials is the fact that they randomize socially intact groups of individuals to interventions. Commonly included clusters or social groups include medical practices, hospitals, neighborhoods, and communities. So these are trials, then, in which the unit of randomization are groups rather than individuals. They're complex studies, though, in which the intervention can be administered at a number of levels. When the intervention is delivered, say, to an entire community, as in a public health intervention, those are referred to as cluster-cluster trials. Sometimes, as in knowledge translation studies, the target is health professionals, and those are called professional cluster trials. And sometimes the intervention is directed at patients, and those are called individual cluster trials. And each of these kinds of cluster trials raises its own mixture of ethical issues. Outcomes, however, are measured on individuals. Cluster randomized trials are a family of designs. They're not just one design. We're mostly in this first session going to be focusing on parallel cluster studies in which the intervention and control group both receive their interventions at the same time. There's another subset of cluster randomized trials called step wedge studies that will be the focus of the second theme's discussion. And in step wedge studies, these are really studies of rollouts of interventions where all the clusters begin on the control condition and then are randomly allocated to switch to the intervention condition such that at the end of the study, all clusters are receiving the intervention. Okay. I am missing a slide here. You know, the organizers plainly looked at my slides and said, goodness, these are too long. We'll just take one out, and thank you for that. There are a number of ethical issues associated with cluster randomized trials, and we'll be discussing these during the next two sessions. When is a cluster randomized design justified? These are complex studies, complex multi-level studies. Who are the research participants? From whom and when must informed consent be obtained? Who are the gatekeepers? Do concepts like clinical equipoise apply? How do we determine if study benefits outweigh harms? And who is vulnerable and what protections are needed? And these are questions that are going to run through the first couple of themes as well as our breakout groups. There is some helpful guidance available for cluster trials in the Ottawa Statement on the ethical design and conduct of cluster trials. That's in your reading package. And of course, there's a very helpful and complementary statement in the most recent CIOMS guideline.